minute, please.
I think we can begin now. We're live.
Yeah, you can.
A very good afternoon and a warm welcome to all of you joining us virtually today. I consider it an honor to be your host this World Entrepreneurs Day. BW VC World, BW Disrupt, and BW Accelerate from the BW Business World family jointly present the Entrepreneurs Circle, a summit exclusively to celebrate the entrepreneurial spirit that runs through and through the country. My name is Janani Janarthan, and I'll lead you through the proceedings of the day. BW Business World is a 40-year-old business publication that reports on all contours of business and economic landscape. In our efforts to bring together all the stakeholders together, we play home to several communities that focus on emerging businesses, entrepreneurs, and their success stories. Addressing this large ecosystem along with BW VC World and BW Accelerate is BW Disrupt, where we're streaming live now. Celebrated on the 21st of August every year, World Entrepreneurs Day earmarks a moment in our time where we look back and reflect on the role of entrepreneurs in economic growth. We celebrate founders, managers, designers, industrialists, innovators, administrators, all of whom had the idea for a unique solution for a problem that others did support, a novel business solution to generate employment and create value, and pave the way through their innovative ideas. We mark today to celebrate their leadership vision and what it takes to run a successful business in this country. From the French economist Jean-Baptiste, who first chronicled this word in 18th century, till today, the contours of the entrepreneurial landscape has irrefutably changed. And for that, our Prime Minister Narendra Modi has also ensured many initiatives, Digital India, Make in India, and the larger financial drive that has birthed many possibilities. As we recover from the pandemic and inch towards pre-pandemic business recovery, we hope the conversation today will spark young minds and distill the realities of being an entrepreneur in this country. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome our very own Editor-in-Chief and Chairman, Dr. Anurag Batra, who will be delivering the welcome address and telling us what it means to be an entrepreneur and how they are the new engine of growth for the Indian economy. Over to you, Dr. Batra.
Thank you, Janani. For all our viewers and readers, Janani is an editorial colleague. She writes for us on BW People, on HR and organizational issues. She writes for us on CFO, issues. So she's an editorial colleague who's today hosting the Entrepreneurs Day celebrations and the Entrepreneurs Day Summit, as we call it, the Entrepreneur Circle. So thank you, Janani, for hosting it and doing a fantastic job for us. See, Janani is already outlined that entrepreneurs look at solutions and create businesses around them. I can tell you, being one, I identify that with that. Entrepreneurship is a tough thing. It seems easy from the outside, but it takes a lot of passion, sweat, toil, money, years, and most importantly, having a mission to build something or change the way certain things work. I can only say that the last 12 to 18 months, in spite of the corona pandemic, have been golden time for entrepreneurs in India. We've raised record $18 billion in venture capital. Exits have happened, new businesses have been seeded, and entrepreneurship is stronger than it was 2 years back. The entrepreneur ecosystem and every stakeholder, venture capital, private equity, angel investors, everyone is excited about the future. I may say that the last 18 months have taught us 5 lessons. One, less is more. Not necessarily more resources mean more output. You can be frugal and you can achieve more. Second is, never say never. Question what our own self-limiting beliefs are. COVID has shown us that a lot of things before COVID that we said are not possible because of the forced nature of COVID became possible. Third, is to be able to look at each business driver and see what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, what creates value, what doesn't. Fourth is the fact that the digital consumer, if I may say, every consumer has become digital, uh, is now more comfortable with the digital economy and a virtual way of being. And last but not the least, the entrepreneurs have also started creating wealth. I've always said there is a difference between getting rich and creating wealth. I think the last 16 to 18 months have showed wealth creation can happen if you have a long term horizon and you are in it for the right reasons to make an impact and to build something impactful. We at bwdisrupt.com, vcworld.in, through our various 22 communities, mainbusinessworld.in, our various initiatives like the Visa, the Women Entrepreneur Summit, Tech Tours, the 30 under 30, 40 under 40 Young Entrepreneur Awards are bringing new and new entrepreneurs to the light and showcasing what they're doing. Today's initiative is another step in this. We at BW Business World will continue to be a catalyst in helping entrepreneurs grow and find their sweet spot. I don't want to stay between the great panels and keynote speakers and the panelists that are lined up for you over the next 2 hours. So I'll hand it back to Janani. I'll say entrepreneurship uh, is an option in India whose time has come. More and more young people will become entrepreneurs. God bless you. All the best. Back to you, Janani.
Thank you, Dr. Batra. And now, to kickstart the very first panel on making India the new startup country and what we need to do to power new age businesses, I invite our moderator, Dr. Abhinav Trivedi, to take over the proceedings. Mr. Abhinav is our managing editor of BW TV, and he'll be moderating panelists Pankaj Vermani, CEO and founder of Clovia, Chandralika Hazarika, co-founder and MD, Big Things, Anand Vemuri, CEO of 91 Springboard, Molly Telly, CEO and Director, Eva Cosmetics, and Mr. Srinath Ravichandran, co-founder and CEO, Agnikol. Mr. Abhinav, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Janani, for that introduction. And I wish I would have been a doctor. Janani introduced me as Dr. Abhinav Trivedi, which I'm not, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Abhinav Trivedi. That's plain and simple. I wish I do become a doctor one day. But thank you, Janani, for that introduction. But raising the level of entrepreneurship in India has been consistent over the last 1 decade, ladies and gentlemen. But the fact of the matter is that India as a market is still very discouraging when it comes to entrepreneurs operating in a completely oblivious sector, a sector which is not common to many, an area of operations when they are not common, when they are not known to people. Entrepreneurship there is still a taboo word. Of course, I am joined by very illuminating panel, Pankaj, Molly, Chandralika, Anand, and of course, Srinath. Thank you so much for joining us. My first question to you will be very simple and straightforward. Out of 10, and this is open to all of you, out of 10, how many marks would you give to the encouragement of entrepreneurship ecosystem in this country from investors, from government, from the masses alike? Out of 10, how many marks each of you gives? Molly, I'll start with you.
Hi, I think I would give somewhere between 7 to 8.
7 to 8. Chandaleka?
I would give 4 to 5, depending on the sector you are in. I guess India as a country is still open to a few sectors. Like for especially I'm in fashion tech, that's a very new sector. So yes, depending on the sector.
Sure. Pankaj?
I think from an encouragement perspective, I'll give it a 10 on 10 right now, but I think it's also very relative, right? So when my journey started in 2002, 2003. So if I put a perspective there, where I had to take a job between my two entrepreneur stances just to, get married to my girlfriend, I think we've come a very, very long way now. So I think it's a 10 on 10.
Sure. I think Srinath and the other panelists are yet to join. Okay, fine. We'll take this forward from here. Okay. Now, the average, apart from Pankaj, who's of course optimistic, overtly optimistic, let's assume on an average, agar hum baki do panelists ke bhi number ya marks ko consider kare, somewhere around 5. And I'm sure all of you will agree that if we take this a few years back, suppose in 2015 or 16, the average would have been somewhere close to 3 to 4. Fact of the matter is, and Chandrika, I'll start with you because you are into tech, and tech is, tech has been the darling of the Indian investment community. How has been the response so far from the investment community, from your customers? And when you introduce your sector to somebody or some investors, because most of the investors, when they look at your pitch, what are the first few parameters what they look at, and how discouraging or encouraging they are? Because if we count the number of pitches an entrepreneur usually makes, like I remember I started my company in 2016 and we made around 25 pitches to first understand how pitches are made in the first place. So you learn from your mistakes, you fail fast. It's the hard thing about hard things. We all know that. But when you pitch to the investors, what is the environment like? How discouraging or encouraging are they?
Uh, let's be positive. Yes, yes, it is very encouraging, definitely. Especially again, the tech, and again, I said, as I'm fashion tech, this is very new to India. But our main market is actually Europe and US. So that sometimes we do face a little restrictions because some of the investors are not very well aware of the European market. Sometimes they get a little scared because that as a market, maybe they don't have a lot of, inroads now. But US is, it's the Indian ecosystem is very well aware of. So that's the only setback I face. But I think there's been, because fashion tech is suddenly very hot, and there has been 3 big acquisitions in last 3 months, because of which we are receiving suddenly a lot of requests from the Indian ecosystem. Everybody wants to understand where is this sector heading, because obviously India is such a huge retail sector, billions. So definitely everybody is right now very encouraging.
Molly, do you concur with the Chandalika's views?
I concur. I think overall, see, we are into cosmetics and personal care, and for our category, consumer is one of the I would say emerging spaces for the investors to gather a lot of interest, because initially people were looking more into e-commerce and IT based kind of sectors, and over the years the ecosystem from an investor perspective has definitely evolved, and consumer is one of a very fast growing space in India, and personal care and cosmetics have also been a place where there have been a lot of new entrants. So going back to 2014 when EBA launched versus today, I think the interest over the years has only grown in this space.
Sure.
However, we are into slightly different kinds of cosmetics. Our products are halal certified,
Halal
as
cosmetics, yeah.
certified vegan and cruelty free, and we are the first brand in India to have launched halal certified cosmetics. So definitely, if I go back to 2016 2017 when we were starting to approach investors, nobody had heard of halal cosmetics in India, and what has happened today is we are being sought after just because we are halal certified, because overall globally the space has grown, and we ourselves as a brand have done a lot to raise the awareness of halal cosmetics in India, and that sets us apart from others. So I think there are challenges if you are the first brand or a first company trying to do something different. But as the ecosystem grows and there are more brands that come in, or people have a better understanding of it, things only become easier.
Okay, Pankaj.
So I think it's a very interesting panel, right? Because I think Chandrika sits on fashion tech and the whole thing about Molly's personal care, and we sit right bang in the middle, right? So we are predominantly a consumer company which is very, very heavily driven by fashion tech, right?
Yeah.
So I think one interesting learning is that the quality of questions have evolved a lot. I think that's where you find your leading indicators, right?
Okay.
So in the past few, I think in the last couple of years, which is a very good time frame given, right, by both the panelists. I think a very interesting time frame. What we have seen is that earlier the questions were very fundamental. Now they're very, very, very evolved, right? And I think that's a great sign of people trying to understand and go deeper into the ecosystem. So I think the evolution is fairly certain at this point of time. Of course, as Chandrika, Molly both said, people are extremely driven by what is the current wave. If personal care is the current wave, or is it? I remember a time when I just raised my first round way back in 2007 in my first job, and I got a call from one of my investors, and I won't name who, and he said, "Yeah, do you know somebody in social gaming?" Because it was very hot that point of time. So it's always driven by sector, because there's pressure of LPs and everything as well. So I think it's a good time. So but it's very, very evolved now. I think there's a lot of maturity.
Of course, maturity has evolved over time. But if I understand and if I compare the Indian market to the European markets or the American markets, because I'm sure two out of the three panelists do operate in the market outside India as well. Uh, in UK primarily, when you raise your first set of investment from an angel investor, the government subsidizes your investment. Do you think there needs to be some steps taken from the government side? Of course, we have Startup India, which was launched a couple of years ago. There have been, like, angel tax has been scrapped over the last few years. They have been developing. So we are slowly and steadily adopting a new approach. But what better can be done from the government in the administration side to encourage more and more entrepreneurs? And we have seen post-COVID resurgence of entrepreneurship in India. What should be done from the government and the administration side? Molly, I'll start with you.
My experiences having worked with government is limited. Because when we started with our own funding, and over the years we have raised money from the venture capital sector. Although with whatever little bit of whether it's debt or whether it's any other sector, what I've felt is that definitely the kind of red tape that they need to reduce, and the timelines is very critical, because for a startup there isn't an enormous amount of time that they have, right? So whatever they need to do in a short time. So I think there needs to be a different way of them looking at startups and their funding needs, and the timeline needs to be according. However, what I feel is you're just thrown into the mix of whatever are the instruments which are more generic that the banks or the governments offer, and there isn't really anything to fast track that. So I think anything that can fast track in the entirely different process, speed driven, would be extremely useful.
Abhinav, you're on mute.
I'm so sorry. I was shouting that Chandalika, you were on mute. I didn't realize we had anything. Yes, Chandalika, please go ahead.
Sorry, yes, I completely agree with Molly. Speed, especially, when founders are pitching for investment, and, it has to be done by the founders. The kind of time it drains us, either where do you focus on your clients or your, investment? Oh God, it's in the early stages. I guess it definitely drives us mad. I have worked closely with Indian government, having some other organizations like Sweden India Business Council, for example. So I was invited by the Swedish government as one of the women in tech, and for the Stockholm Tech Fest, I was a panelist. So I'm saying these are all government initiatives with other countries, whether it's Europe or US, have been very, very beneficial. I was also invited to Helsinki, and by the way, that was a completely fully funded trip for me. That was a great exposure to a new market. I think such initiatives are amazing, but I don't know, I'm not an expert in that, but many a times, during the pandemic, we were approached by very big global giants. Somehow they had an issue because we are an Indian registered company. And that request keeps coming to flip, or I don't know what is the issue. Some people say there is some tax restrictions. I wish we could look more into it. As I said, I'm not an expert, but we did lost a lot of investors because it was headquartered in India then. Yes.
Okay. Pankaj.
Deeper understanding, because having an HQ in India doesn't hurt, unless you, maybe earlier it was listing issues, I think, which has got sorted now. I want to just add to Chandlika's side that it has nothing to do with the stage of the business. Even in late stages, also it's an infinite treadmill of raising money, and it is the worst part of being a founder. I think there's one interesting thing. I was, last time, I think in India Today Conclave, Mr. Gadkari had said this beautiful thing, and it just stuck with me forever. I think it was in the conclave, and it said that one of the biggest part of being a complex place like India is also the very beauty of it, because that's what your moat is, right? I mean, you the way you can maneuver, a lot of outsiders cannot. And I think it's such a phenomenal. Of course, it's like I made it complex for you because it will be easier for you. I mean, it doesn't make sense, but I think some ways you can also use it to your. I'm sounding too optimistic. I'm not that optimistic a person, but I'm saying that there is a certain positivity to that as well. Having that level of complexity sometimes gives you an edge. So it's a way for you to kind of maneuver it. It may not be a bad idea.
maneuver, it may not be a bad idea. So, taking from you, Pankaj, if I understand the mature markets, like Israel outbeats every country when it comes to new age startups. India today, 9 out of 10 startups still shut down in their first or second year. Sometimes it's because of the lack of the vision. Second time is because they did not understand the market and the vision did not fit well. Sometimes it's a dispute between the founders. In the initial stage, what matters according to all three of you? That's one. To because all three of you have crossed a considerable stage. I mean, Pankaj, I won't even call you a startup anymore because you're almost like 20 years old. But when we come
Yeah,
to
the brand is 6 years old, so not that
the
old.
brand is 6 years
Yeah,
old, but you started in 2002. So,
so my
roughly,
first, yeah. So the brand, so
sure,
the company started, yeah, in 2015. Yeah.
sure. Now, if I understand, what is the first, the few initial learnings for each one of you, which are very important for a founder, especially in a market like India, which is difficult to maneuver, as Pankaj said, but it makes it easy. There's a flip side to it as well. What is the most important stage? Second, what can be done to encourage it? Do we need more incubators? Do we need more, relaxed norms? Do we need to let go of many money which is being invested? What are the kind of structures we need to support early stage startups? Pankaj, you can start this.
I think two things are super fundamentally important. I think it's the product market fit, which you have to understand, and mentors play a very big role in that. I think because when you just straight out of college, the first startup in 2004 vis-a-vis now, I think the way we look at markets is very different. So and there's been a lot of mentors who helped. So I think product market fit and the right partners. I think when things go south, I think you're absolutely bang on. There that this founder in fights and all, it's like if you have to make a marriage work, the two spouses cannot be fighting all the time. So yeah, I think these two would probably be the most important in my mind.
And what can be done to support it or
I
to
think
help
incubators,
people?
as you rightly mentioned, I think incubators is a phenomenal idea. And right now, as we speak, I would be part of at least 4 such forums. Where there's a lot of mentorship, etc. is being provided. I'm sure all of us are, and I think that is a very beautiful sign. Because it's same for colleges. Like it's the alumni who kind of takes the whole game up, right? So it's
Hmm.
exactly the same. And somebody gives such a phenomenal idea the other day, and it's a great example of that. They said that they are baby showers, right? So why can't we have like a startup shower where somebody starting up and it's not about anything else? I could give you some AWS credits, right? Somebody else could come and give you maybe Office 365 ka 5 subscriptions. I thought it's a phenomenal idea. It creates a lot of celebration. It creates a lot of people to come together. I think the whole environment has to change. I think it's a phenomenal way of thinking like that. And I think incubators, as you rightly pointed, is a great sign. Every college, be tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, everyone is trying that. And I think that will start building the fundamentals a lot more strongly. But I think more people have to mentor, more people have to think about giving back. I think that's phenomenally important, more important than than we realize it is.
Touche. Yeah, recently, Ashwini Vaishnaw, the recently appointed Railways and Communication Minister, he did highlight that we need more incubators in the country to support more and more startups. Molly, what about you? What do you think are the most important traits, and how can we, develop and nurture them so that we can also become the next Silicon Valley of the world?
See, I think that to start off with, before I started, me and my sister, we co-founded EBA. I was working in management consulting. So generally the approach for me was, I want to do something which is unique and, something which is different than what's existing product on the market. But at the same time, if it would be great if it was, meeting an unmet need, which no other company or no other brand is catering to. So I think, generally I feel that having, as Pankaj said, a product market fit, doing something unique, doing something different than what's existing is going to give you a better chance of success. So success is never guaranteed, but if it can give you some head start, something different, it would be great. So having a really good business plan, and then secondly having a community around you who you can talk to, I felt that for me that was very critical, to have people to connect with, to talk to, and to really understand what this journey is going to be like, right? Because initially you might have a very starry eyed view of, okay, I want to start this, and that sounds very exciting at that time. but it's going to entail an immense amount of work, and not just work, there are also going to be lots of challenges along the way. So it's better to go in with that understanding that, hey, it's going to be fun, but at the same time, it's going to be having, be prepared for what may come along the way. So, I mean, I belong to Ahmedabad, and that's where my company is based. And I feel like from back in 2014 to where the ecosystem is today in my city, it has changed a lot. So I think more of that, more of support, more of encouragement, and also more forums for even women entrepreneurs to be represented in India today would be great.
Okay, Chandalika?
Yeah, to your very well said, Molly. I agree to all of them, even Pankaj. The first question that you asked, I think, what helped, I can just say from my journey, obviously be very focused in the initial days, having the right mentors. I mean, you need mentors no matter what, but sometimes you also come across a lot of advice on the way. You just get a little lost as an early stage entrepreneur, what to pick up. There are so many directions. I guess being completely focused, understanding obviously your product market fit, and understanding what is happening in the global scene is very important. We cannot just think that, oh, this is my unique idea, India doesn't have it, but you never know, there is an amazing company from Indonesia already entered. So I think we should not underestimate. We need to know what's happening globally, who's funded, what is happening. At the same time, not get scared, obviously. You have
You
to be
mean network
focused.
and awareness.
Yes, definitely. And I think one thing I feel, I think it's a global women entrepreneurs. Yes, very rightly said. I feel less forums. Right now, I'm in an incubator in Hong Kong. I'm the only Indian women there. It's only women. And in terms of, very focused incubators, as you said. So I'm ideally moved based out of Milan. So I had to move to Milan because for a fashion tech, accelerator. I could not find that targeted in India. So because of which, with all the top luxury brands as their partners guiding us, and it was completely focused on fashion tech, not only luxury, including the whole supply chain. So I guess very focused accelerators and incubators are definitely missing.
Definitely missing. And of course, we are now joined by Srinath Zavichandran, who was earlier missing. Srinath, hi. You are into space tech primarily. Now, in your space is a completely new space, and most of the people do not even know that a sector like private space tech exists. Of course, Abhi, post Jeff Bezos and who was the other guy? Richard Branson. The Richard Branson. After that, people have come to know that space exploration can be privatized as well. But people largely did not even knew about the space and the sector, so to speak. So, from your perspective, what are the two most important traits in the initial stage of your startup building, and how as an ecosystem can we encourage it?
Sure. So, hi, I'm Srinath, one of the co-founders of this company called Agnikul, where we are building small rockets to take small satellites to space. Two most important things, I think, what I think entrepreneurs or anyone who's thinking of a new idea, or even the first few people joining a startup can think about is to probably have slightly a bit of a thick skin, right? You get a lot of, no's or a lot of negative opinions. And I don't even think it's people being pessimistic. It's just people telling you, it is hard, right? And I think we should be in a mindset where we can try to understand why they are saying it and how we can actually work around that, as opposed to getting affected by that. So I think that helped me and my other co-founder Moin as well quite a bit. So that is one thing definitely. Sort of the corollary to that is the persistence part, which I think is extremely important. I just believe that there is this thing in maths, right? It's called the law of large numbers, I think. Right? If you really wait for long enough, I think it all branches out. So if you hear enough no's at some point, probability will start favoring you and you will get an S. So I've been a big believer in brute force, big believer in persistence, till the point where automatically S's started to happen. So I think those two things is what at least helped us in our very early years, because when we started in India, space tech was still as a startup space. It was definitely a new thing. The good thing is ISRO has done so much, and globally there is a tremendous amount of respect for space tech out of India. But that said, is it possible by a private player? Should we be doing this in India? I think at least 10 to 20% of the people we met initially were like, are you sure you want to do this in India? And actually both me and my other co-founder, we came back from I came back from the US, he came back from Australia to do this here. And so there was this question about, hey, why don't you actually just go back and do it? Isn't it going to be easier to raise money, easier to get access to tech and so on? But we actually honestly believe that it is possible to do it here, and it is actually going to work out good for both the country here and also for the business itself. So I think that was the guiding thought for us. What should be done? I think
these are more of a personal traits which you highlighted, Srinath. So yeah, in any ways, can they be supported by the ecosystem? And if yes, how?
I was just going to say that, yes. So I think the big one which changed for us, and it's actually starting to change right now, is the support from investors for deep tech, right? And what do you mean by deep tech or hardware or something? Ventures where it takes a lot of time to get some return on your investment, right? It's not like in 2 years you can go and suddenly say I'll exit as an investor. Yeah, it's going to be more like a 5 to 7 year time span. And I think if investors are able to gather the patience in them, then I think things will get definitely better from an ecosystem level. The other thing is just for people who are, there's a self-fulfilling loop here, because I think a lot of engineers, actually good ones, actually after their graduation here want to go to the US, because I think they think that that's where the cool technology can be built, or cool things can be done. But I think now you can see, now we recently heard about Ola coming out with electric bikes here. Ather is already doing that as well. I'm hearing Ultraviolet also is doing that. People should start believing that more things can happen here, and that will automatically also increase the ecosystem. So that's
great.
What I wanted to say.
No, I really appreciate your practicalness, Srinath, because people usually, come up with that blanket like sab kuch acha hai. We need to talk about real challenges, and I'm glad you spoke about them. Anand, welcome to the panel.
Hi.
So I think you forgot the question. You were not a part of the panel when we were discussing this. My question to you would be, what was there to the other panelists is, what are the 2 or 3 most important, mistakes which most of the entrepreneurs make in India, or maybe what is needed, what's most important, and how can the ecosystem encourage it?
Sure. Okay. So I think. Okay, so in terms of mistakes, I think this is probably universal. I don't think it's unique to India, where there is a tendency to assume you have it all figured out.
Let me reframe. If not mistakes, then what are the 2 most important traits you need in the initial phase?
Sure. So in the initial phase, I think, like by far the most common thing that entrepreneurs have to learn is you're testing a hypothesis. Right? There's a tendency to associate success with, I want to raise money and start scaling.
Yeah.
Without asking yourself the question of, am I scaling the right thing? Do I actually have a solution that, okay, 5 people are buying it, but is it really, have we reached that product market fit stage?
Correct. Yeah.
And, people also don't realize that maybe 2 crores is the right amount to raise, not like $5 million. Right? Because with $5 million comes expectations, and you have a board and how you run the company and stuff. At that point, people don't want to talk about hypothesis, right? They want to talk about growth, right? So I think that's for any first-time entrepreneur, that's typically the first lesson you're learning, right? And what goes beyond that then is building the team, really. Right? Really is especially for first-time entrepreneurs, that I know from my experience, and I spend a lot of time. We run co-working spaces, so all our customers, and many of our customers are also startups, right?
Yeah.
So again and again, I think what makes the news is fundraising and stuff like that, but really organization and the skills, that go with that. I think that these are probably the 2 areas which I think entrepreneurs do the maximum learning. Yeah.
Okay. Now, Srinath mentioned thick skin. I'll take the conversation a little further, talking about the skin in the game. How important for each one of you has been mentorship? Each one of you has mentioned that, and mentorship is important in the initial phase. But one of the pivotal challenges, ladies and gentlemen, most entrepreneurs face is choosing the right mentor and pitching to the right investor. And most of the times this is a very negative tectonic cycle, which I have experienced by talking to a lot of entrepreneurs and myself, is you are pitching to the wrong people and also you're choosing the right mentors. And in the process, you get discouraged and demotivated, thinking that you are the one who's doing something wrong. So, how to choose the right mentor? That's number one. I mean, what matters to be the right mentor? What qualifies? Is it industry experience? Is it any startup entrepreneur who has been a founder and operating in any space? How to choose the right mentor in the space? Srinath, I'll start with you because your sector is the most unique.
Sure. And I think it's most important thing choosing the right set of mentors to start with. I think first of all, finding someone who has already done some version of a startup and who's not yet been completely turned a skeptic because of that. I think that is the person who you need to talk to. One interesting thing that I have found is, and so my instinct when we started was to reach out to many entrepreneurs, and interestingly, a lot of them actually complained, and I was a little shocked because I thought, hey, you guys have actually been through the journey, but I mean, now I realize, right? I mean, there is a tendency to the burnout is so much, and you do go in with a certain expectation, and reality is completely different. And so, hearing from an entrepreneur sometimes can actually be a slight negative too, because you get too much of reality. You actually want to be in the ignorance is bliss phase, at least for a little bit of time. So, the right mentor, according to me, would be someone who has been through a startup cycle and who's still having that, that the childlike curiosity in him or her, or that pure passion in him or her to say, yeah, all these things do happen, but it is still worth doing all of these things, right? And that took us a little bit of time. So, but do be aware that not all entrepreneurs are the right people to have as mentors. At least that was my experience. The other thing is to find someone in the industry that, or in the area that you are wanting to do your product in or service in. They need not be startup people at all. They just need to be people who can tell you about who you're actually trying to add value to. Because as usually, I think startup people, when they have an idea, we think that the solution is too awesome, and unfortunately, that's not always the case, right? So getting a reality check from the industry might also help, and that could be anyone who has spent 5 to 10 years in the industry. So they'll give you a pulse of what is actually expected in that area. You also talk to an entrepreneur who has still that optimism in him or her, and that should get you going. That would be my two cents.
Okay, Pankaj, like Srinath mentioned, to strike a balance. Like, do we need to strike a balance between extreme reality check and, of course, on the other side?
So I think from our perspective, and we've been very blessed to have mentors both India and abroad. In fact, we just brought on board Sharon Turney, who's run Victoria's Secrets for 20 years, right? And so I think the learning there has been very, very simple for us. I think one, we choose a mentor in a domain that the person has already been doing a lot of work in, right? So
Correct.
So I'm not saying it should be an operating person, because if you're looking for somebody who is in the space of helping raise funds, right? So there the operating role is effectively creating the right story, right? So it has, so domain expertise has to be there, and there has to be somebody who's done it on the ground, right? And I think it's pretty aligned to what Srinath is also saying. And then I think other thing that we believe is that you have to spend a lot of time with the person to understand how the person actually aligns to you. I think that is super critical. There were a few people who were so stellar when we were trying to reach out to people, and then we realized after 2 conversations that the ethical match is not there, right? I mean, so we are the long road people, and there is a shortcut people, and those shortcut people are phenomenal in what they do, but you don't do that as well, right? So if you try to be somebody else, you'll end up screwing up, right? So
you have to be clear about your vision.
And at the same time, you have to be aware of what you're good at, right? I mean, you
Yes.
don't try to be somebody else who'll end up screwing up, right? So that is the, I think that's pretty important. And I think you have to spend a lot of time. There's the only way to find out. Tabi test match happens like, a test ka series is like 5 matches, probability proves true, as Srinath has very, very recently pointed out, right? So probability proves true in larger number of cases. The more meetings you do, I think by the 4th meeting, you start realizing, acha, bacho, this is how you are. So, and this is why I am, there's no match. So,
and it takes a lot of time for you to come to that realization point. You're absolutely right, Pankaj. Molly.
So I think I would echo what has been said already. I do believe that when you are starting off, you need mentors of various kinds. It's not just about one mentor. I think you need to look at your strengths, and you need to know where are the gaps, and then go after trying to identify mentors in that space, because that's like the white areas. That's the areas where you don't know anything and you probably need a lot more guidance. And for us, when we started, I think that was more on the marketing side of things. I'm an engineer, and my sister is a bit more from a research background. So As far as product development, manufacturing, all that was concerned, we were very strong in those areas. But how to go about really, testing the product market fit, how to go about communicating and positioning the brand in the halal cosmetics and vegan space in India was a big gap for us, because that wasn't our expertise. So we went after trying to find people who could mentor us in that area. We were very fortunate to find and have on as a mentor Mr. Chandan Nath, who used to head Mudra Communications, which is one of the largest agencies in India, and he joined us as a mentor even before we had conceptualized what the brand name would be or whether we should be even doing something in that space. After time in that space for like more than 2 decades, the kind of insights that he was able to bring us, and also bring a process to how to go about doing it right. Because when you're trying to do something at that time, doing it right really matters. You don't have many chances, have limited resources, and you should try to do it as right as possible. So I think thinking mentors and bringing them early on in the process, to me, is key.
Bringing them early on, starting early. Chandalika.
Yes, I completely agree with all of you guys. At an early stage, when you maybe did not have raised money, getting the right mentors, the positive mentors, as Srinath said very correctly, is so important, because that time there'll be all the no's flooding in. You need people who are going to hold your back. And that's the only time you need to be very careful. Without any offense, we did come across, it's very easy to be in awe of people at that stage. And sometimes you do come across people who might be willing to just looking at the equity. You will also find those kind of people. You have to be very aware of what you're doing at that stage. So we did have one from the industry and one completely from the tech front. They have been blessings. And now at a later stage, right, when you have revenues or you have clients, I think that time, as Pankaj said, having somebody who's an industry leader from your sector is very important. And right now, I have a mentor in Canada from one of the top colleges. He's a chairman who teaches consumer behavior. Now, for me today, when I'm trying to understand, because I'm selling a technology, the world is changing because of the pandemic. I'm trying to understand the consumer behavior globally. So that kind of mentor really helps me right now, because he's guiding me through different geographies. Yes.
Sure. That's important. Anand, what about you?
So I'd say in choosing to work with a mentor, I think for me, the most important thing is you have to be very clear on what it is you're looking for.
Yes.
Right. Srinath touched on, 2 big areas, which is like building an organization and, domain expertise, right? This is very common, a lot of startups, including us, right? But if I go to the domain expert, right? So let's say if I'm in fintech and I work with a very senior person in Kotak Bank as a mentor, now that person would not necessarily be the right person to talk to about like building an organization, right? Because they already joined an organization that was fairly mature at a certain stage, right? So, a person who is right for one area may not be the right person for another area, right? So working with someone who has started a company for a certain set of things, domain experts for another set of things. And in some cases, it may not even be a mentor. You may need a consultant who will actually come into your company and work with you at a very deep level and your team and so on, right? So if you're not clear upfront, you may end up being vague. You may not be able to get that value from them. And in fact, you may end up wasting their time and you yourself will be.
Your time as well, correct.
So being clear, asking yourself the tough questions on, what do I really want? Sometimes, running a startup is tough. It's confusing. You think I'll just go to some senior person and they'll give me all the answers. It doesn't work like that,
Right.
You have to be clear, right? And the other thing is, once you start working with them, it's also your job to help them out. Because a lot of advice is very context specific, right? What's right for at one stage.
Somebody might not work for somebody else.
And even in the same company, depending on what's happening today, like what's happening during COVID, what's good advice today may not be good advice 1 year from now, right? So you have to help them out and actually give them the context, update them. It's a two-way flow of information, right? Because if you don't give them your context, they'll give you generic advice, right? And you can like go on YouTube and get some gyan anyway, right? Like you can, you know. And the real value of having a mentor and having that personal relationship is they'll give you advice that they believe is right for you, right? And if you don't tell them what's unique about your current problems or your current context, then they can't do that, right? So you've got to help them
Being
out.
upfront really helps from the very beginning. And since you mentioned that, Anand, I'll
Yeah.
pick from you and we'll go backwards.
Sure.
Indian entrepreneurship ecosystem, like if I include the investors, the founders, and the so-called, angel investors, जो 50,000 रुपए के चेक लेकर के घूमते हैं बड़े बड़े इन्वेस्टमेंट कम्युनिटीज में, उनकी भी बात कर रहा हूँ. The fact of the matter is that it's a very peculiar ecosystem. Okay, so I need very practical advice for all the viewers, for all the upcoming entrepreneurs, from all of you. Okay, what the common mistakes which usually a lot of young entrepreneurs make, and I'm telling this to you after a lot of discussions and a lot of entrepreneurs myself. Do you need to firstly formalize every help you take? Firstly, like if you're getting a mentor on board, do you need to formally get him on an advisory board? Or is just 1 or 2 meetings, maybe in every 6 months, not formalizing it, taking help from somebody in developing an app, and maybe not asking for equity? Do you need to formalize everything on paper? Number one. That's the first question which I want to ask. The second part is, India's VCs have one peculiar problem. They do not say no to you. Okay, what they'll do is they will say हाँ करते हैं, बात अच्छी है, interesting idea है, हम 1 महीने बाद मिलते हैं, इसको थोड़ा सवाल रिफाइन करो. They will never say straightforward no to you. Maybe they have a fear of missing out, or maybe they are aping something कि शायद बाद में कुछ अच्छा निकल आए. Now, how to deal with such investors? Like, is it okay? Because I remember there are a few investors जिनके पास आप जाओगे वो आपको 3 साल तक लटकाएंगे कि हम इन्वेस्टमेंट करेंगे. वहीं पे ऑन द अदर हैंड यू मीट फ्यू ऑफ देम, वो आपको एक मीटिंग में बोल देंगे the idea is good, the prospect is good, but मुझसे अभी नहीं होगा. They have a straightforward no. Of course, you have respect, but India's entrepreneurship ecosystem is full of investors who do not say no to you.
Sure. Yeah.
As a novice entrepreneur, how should you approach these two peculiar problems which are pertaining to the Indian ecosystem?
Okay. So on the first one, on formalizing things with an advisor or a mentor. See, so typically I'd say that, the first few conversations really, it's a long-term relationship, right? You're not going to, it should not be an expectation on either side that, we'll get married on the first date kind of thing, right? So typically, you'd, you chat, it's casual, there's no sort of commitments being made on either side. And as and when you feel like it's working, where, okay, as an entrepreneur, you should want to formalize it, right? You want to be in a position where, hey, I want to demand your time, right? Today, I'm requesting your time and you're being very kind to me. Yes. But, I want to formalize it because I really want to spend, time with you, and let's do it regularly and so on. And I want to make it worth your time. Okay, so let's put some equity on the table. Let's, something, right? And honestly, if they're being pushy and all, or if they want to formalize it sooner than you're comfortable, then that's generally a negative sign also, right?
Okay.
If an investor is asking for advisory equity for spending time with you, that's a very negative sign. You should strongly consider maybe not even taking their money, forget about that. Right? An investor has skin in the game. It's in their interest that your company does well. They should be spending time anyway, right?
Correct.
So that's my answer to the first one. On investors not saying no, but not saying yes. So honestly, like if it's not a yes, it's a no. But they want to.
You should be open about it. There are no two ways about it. Aap accept kar lo.
I mean, they should be open about it, but like it's okay. Like you should also be learn to read the what's happening, right? Okay, if they haven't said yes, if they aren't like moving from initial call to getting more detail into due diligence term sheet, if there's no progress happening, if it's just sort of update me, what about this, what about that, you should yourself assume
that's a red line.
No, but they don't want to close the door. The reason they're not formally saying no is they want some optionality. They don't want to close the door. And maybe for you also, maybe they're not investing in your Series A, but you want to keep the door open for a Series B. So for you also, it may work that, okay, I'll send you a periodic update once in 3 months, once in 6 months, I'll tell you how things are going. But in your mind, assume it's a no, don't count them in your round, don't sort of keep bugging them. And, also don't let them waste your time. Right? If it's clear to you that it's not going anywhere from 3 months, but the associate is calling you every 2 weeks saying, ye batao, wo batao, then just, be polite, tell them that, I'll send you an update, right? I'm updating all my shareholders, I'm updating other people on a cadence anyway. I'll send you an update once in a while. It's okay, right? So keep
That's
it light.
how it works. That's how it should. Molly.
I think I agree with almost everything Anand said. The point that I want to highlight is that while the investor may not say yes, I think there are lots of signs that they are not really having a feel for what you're pitching. And you be pretty aware of those signs. And as you do a few pitches, I think you kind of get it yourself. And it's important to see them and stop wasting your and their time. I think your time in particular, because what happens is that as a founder, you have a limited bandwidth, and everything that you're doing from a fundraising perspective is actually taking you away from your regular business. And hence, the less time wasted, the better it is. And if you try to increase your productivity by talking more to those investors who are really interested, it kind of helps you from that perspective. Yeah, so I think that's important. As far as investors saying no, I think that sometimes it may not be a fit for them based on the stage where you are, and hence they want to leave the door open in future for maybe a future round. And you might want to do that if you think it's really good. And if you really think that from, there's some issue with the way you are thinking or from an ethical perspective or any of the larger, red flags, then you might want to close the door on them too. So I think as a founder, you have to be pretty clear of what you are looking for and whether that matches with your investors' way of looking at your business or future as well.
The ecosystem needs to be more frank than it is right now, right, Chandrika? Chandalikan, sorry.
Definitely. Unfortunately, I am a very straightforward person, so I like things black and white. I would love the investors to be more black and white, which they are not. And my co-founder would hate me for saying this. I guess it's personally only my take. Before you approach an investor or even an investor approaches you, you ensure to do the whole background check. It's the other way around, I would say. Please be aware who's there in the portfolio. Everything. You should know everything. What is their mandate as much as you can. It did happen to us. She did touch base on the ethical grounds. I recently said upfront no to a very big VC in the world purely because I saw there was a, definitely a direct conflict in their portfolio. I mentioned to them upfront there might be a conflict, but they kept insisting on my roadmap and other things.
Chandrika, that is easier said than done because it takes more than regular LinkedIn research than to know about a portfolio of an investor and maybe the.
Yes, you need to really talk in the industry. If you feel any red flags, you definitely need to dig it. You need to do your due diligence. Like just the way the investors do for the startups, we also need to do for them. Yeah.
Informal due diligence. Pankaj?
Yes.
Yeah, it's like, why so serious, right? I mean, keep your Excel, man. When you start realizing something is moving from a hot to a potential to a relationship, just move into a relationship bucket, move on. I mean, it's as simple a thing as that. I think there are two. So it's such a funny thing. So me and my co-founder have this really funny joke. We say that every time an investor comes all the way to the elevator to see us off, either he's really interested or he just wants to make sure we're not coming back, right? So that's I think it's fine. So one very interesting, one of the most respected angels in the country, so he was so I was sitting with him the other day, and it's a very profound thing he said, and I don't know what it means, frankly, but it's still profound in a way. He said that in India, and he's a very, very well-meaning guy, right? Extremely well-meaning guy. He said that, I'm a very straight shooter, but I stopped saying no because in India, your reputation gets, kind of impacted a lot if you keep saying no too many times, right? And he said it's very, very specific to India because when I'm investing elsewhere, being straightforward is highly respected. I haven't been able to crack that, frankly. I'm still struggling with that, but again, as long as I'm not in his shoes, I'm fine, just maintaining my Excel and moving on. So I think from a mentor perspective, I think one very profound thing that one of you said, I think Anand said, was that, if at a very early stage somebody is talking too much about equity and stuff, even before the relationship has started, I think that's a very, that's a sign in itself. There are certain mentors, who are, who are with me for a very, very long time, right? And I recently had to beg them and say, sir, now is the time for me to at least, make this move forward. So I think it's very, it's very personal, but yes, I think documenting something is a very, very important.
It's important. It's important. I mean, a lot of people do say that. Srinath, I give the last word to you.
Yeah. So actually, interestingly, both the formalizing of the mentor relationship or whatever it is, and the investor being, not saying a yes or a no, I think I'm going to combine both of those and give you the same point, right? I think as an entrepreneur or as an early stage founder, we just have to learn to be okay with gray areas, gray answers, right? Sorry, Chandrika, but I think that's what usually works.
That's what skin in the game is all about.
So not get too attached. I think like Pankaj said, okay, fine. Yeah, I mean, if the investor is dragging, you will know it, and that's okay. I mean, there's nothing personal there, right? I mean, maybe they don't want to say a no, but how does it matter? Because I think Molly also said the same thing. Founder time is important, so we can't just keep waiting. But fundamentally, one thing I've learned, and both me and my other co-founder, we often tell each other, is it's okay to live in this uncertainty. An investor need not say yes or a no. A advisor need not be formally on the board. As long as you're getting what you want out of the relationship, as long as things are progressing, it's fine. Certainty is just for our own satisfaction, right? If things are happening, what else is there? So I think one of the things that have helped us is to be okay to operate from a gray area for as long as it takes, and that's fine.
So that's, summing things up, we are already short on time. We already crossed our limit. But to sum things up, to make India the next Silicon Valley, we need to solve some India-specific problem. And an investor not saying no to you is one of the biggest challenges in the ecosystem. But every ecosystem evolves with its time. So do founders. So do investors. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This was a very interesting panel, and we could have a separate panel discussion on the last question with all of you. So thank you, Pankaj. Thank you, Molly. Thank you, Chandrika. Thanks, Anand. Thank you, Srinath, for joining us. This was really insightful. We hope to see you soon. Over to you, Janani.
Stay safe. Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Abhinav. That was indeed a very interesting discussion. Thank you, Mr. Chandrika. For those of you who are just joining us today, there were some important nuggets in the previous panel discussion, and we are underway in our conversation on entrepreneurs and how the pandemic has changed the business landscape for emerging businesses. This is World Entrepreneurs Day, and we're currently live on BW Disrupt. We're also streaming live on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. So do drop in your thoughts, questions for our speakers, and be a part of this conversation. Tweet to us, talk to us, and let us know. Now we move on to the next panel for the day on first-gen success, what it takes to succeed as an entrepreneur in the long run. Our esteemed panelists for this session are Shivani Malik, Director, Marketing, Damilano and Russo Brileno, B. Bajaj, founder of Sirona Hygiene, Dipali Mathur Dayal, CEO and co-founder of Super Smelly. This conversation will be moderated by our very own President and Head of Finance and Innovation, Mr. Prashad Sarma. And I request the speakers to switch on their camera and mute themselves. And I want to hand this over to Mr. Prasad. Over to you, sir.
All right, thank you, Janani. So, I think I was just watching the previous debate, and it had some interesting twists and turns. And I think I hope that the one that we have now also is equally interesting. We have equally interesting panelists, though. I'd like to welcome Dipali and Shivani already. I think Deep is just going to join us in a minute. Shivani, we still can't see you.
Hi. Hi there, Prasad.
Hi, Dipali. So
start your video because yeah, now it's perfect. Yeah.
All right. Hi. So we've been talking about entrepreneurship and the journey of entrepreneurs, and I think while a lot of focus goes on startups and the startup ecosystem, overall entrepreneurship is a long haul. It's a long journey, right? So while the first 5 years or 7 years is all about getting your numbers right, getting valuations. We were just hearing the previous panelists talking about how to deal with investors and whether there should be gray areas or whether it should be screws should be tight. But I think the panel that we're talking now on, we want to understand that as entrepreneurs, how do you see the long haul, right? How do you see yourself evolving not over the first 5 years or the first 10 years, but, let's say over a 20, 25-year, 30-year journey, right? So I think before we jump into the conversation, we'd like to, hear a little bit about your venture, and, how your entrepreneurial journey came about, how it's been going, before we jump into the deeper discussion. So maybe we'll kick off with Dipali. Dipali, let's hear from you a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So we are celebrating World Entrepreneurship Day at a very exciting time in the country, where being an entrepreneur, we feel that there is enough encouragement and we want to nurture entrepreneurship. So really exciting times. Well, coming to Super Smelly. Super Smelly was, we started operations in 2019. And the idea was triggered to me due to a personal struggle as a mother. But it was the massive numbers that unfolded in front of my eyes, which excited the banker that I was back then. I am a mother, and ever since my daughter Prashali was born, like any other millennial parent, I would research a lot, whether it's a pediatrician, whether it was her dermatologist, vaccination, anything and everything would start from Google and get into deeper research. And I think a lot of parents would resonate with that. When it came to her personal care products, I just had two simple rules. A, that the product should be 100% toxin free. And the second one being that it should be clinically tested for her age group specifically. So the life was hunky-dory as long as she was a little baby. All these new age brands and traditional brands gave us a lot of options. But it is only when she grew up and was entering her teens and I wanted to introduce a toxin-free deodorant and a face wash to her. Did I realize that my baby girl is a part of this massive 40% of India's population, where no one's making any products for them. Yeah, it's either the baby care category and the new mother, or the other end, which is anti-aging, which has been our sweet spot. But what about this huge space in between, the generation that is called Generation Z, under 25s? Nobody was catering to them, and that is where the idea was born. And me and my partner Milan, he's also a parent to two Gen Zers. We realized that if we don't do anything about it, who else will? And that is how Super Smelly was born, as India's first and only 100% certified toxin-free range of personal care products aimed at the youth of the country. So that's how it all began, and we'll come to how it's going.
Right. Thanks, Dipali. Interesting nuggets there. I must tell you guys that at some point in my life, I used to run a venture which grew up very quickly, but also fell apart equally quickly because people weren't really ready to invest in it. They still aren't. We had set up a huge chain of toy stores across the country, and if you would believe, that is actually one of the most underserved markets or domains in India, because even today 80% of products come from the unorganized sector. No quality checks. You were talking about toxins, etc. No toxin checks. It's really a disorganized market. But of course, then it's the women's products market which is the most overserved market. Our flagship store was right opposite one of at least partially competitors of Shivani, and we used to have women walk out of that store with 2 bags full of bags and drag their kids away, saying that no, you can't shop. So I think the women's shopping or the women's products domain seems to be doing really well. Although I don't think that's an area where you're restricted to, Shivani. But we'd love to hear your story. Welcome to the panel.
Thank you so much. And it's an honor to be here as a part of this panel on Day. So basically, I, of course, as any other woman, I have a passion for bags and shoes. And this passion, basically, we started with Da Milano being, this leather brand. Basically, our brand initially we used to deal in leather garments. And it's when I joined the business that we converted it more into we started introducing a lot of accessories. And that's where I think even at that point the market was such where the demand for accessories was really growing. So we started expanding into that field, and that's when we started opening various stores, and we started basically as a retail brand, and we grew with the retail industry of India. So as and when malls started coming about, we started expanding. And of course, I think what really helped us was our entry point into the market was at a point where retail was just about just beginning to grow in India. And of course the product acceptability, like people liked what we produced. And I think the key of our the key thing that has led us to where we are today is that how we changed with the changing times. So we've been around for a while, but I feel for any entrepreneur, like the most important thing is innovation, and I think that's something we really focused on, along with, of course, the main basis of the brand, which is providing high quality products at the most reasonable prices that we can. So of course, giving, as we call it, affordable luxury. So providing affordable luxury, not only in terms of products, but in terms of services. And I think with my passion for shoes, we then introduced, Rosso Brunello around 11 years ago. Today, Rosso Brunello is more of a men's shoe brand because I think, again, every entrepreneurial journey starts with an idea and a gap in the market. This is what I personally feel. So there was no one doing high quality, good shoes, fashionable shoes for men at reasonable prices, and that's where we tapped into the market. And of course, we do have a women's range, but we are very well known for our men's range. And again, innovation and innovating newer ideas every day. We plan to get a few more brands into our kitty as and when the time becomes better.
All right, interesting there, Shivani. Of course, without sounding, off track, but I think I've never met a woman who's not interested in shoes and bags. So, I think it's great that you put that interest, into a business idea. And we see you everywhere. So I think, well done on that. And, I think it's time now to welcome Deep. We almost thought that Deep wouldn't make it and we were very worried, but he's here. And, I must tell you that I've been a germaphobe also all my life. So I think I was probably one of the first users of the products that came out of, Deep's stable. So, I think it's a very relevant area that Deep's been working on. And Deep, I think you weren't there for the first couple of minutes. So we're just going around the table trying to, get some introductions in. So we'd love to hear about, your venture and how your entrepreneurial journey came about.
Well, yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm sorry. I think I had this blocked for 3:45. Thank God message. Otherwise, I just stepped out for lunch. So I'm so sorry. I'm late by a few minutes. Hello, everyone. Hi, Shivani. Hi, Dipali, and everybody else whose cameras aren't open right now. So I'm Deep. I run a startup by the name of Sirona Hygiene. And the reason we exist is because women face a lot of unaddressed, intermittent menstrual hygiene issues in our country, and we're trying to solve them with our unique products. Journey is very simple. Yeah, खुद के experiences हैं when you're traveling with your family and you see how girls don't get access to clean toilets. So our first product was Pee Buddy, which became India's first stand-in pee funnel for women, so that they don't have to touch the toilet seats. And then the Pandora box opened, and we got into menstrual hygiene issues and intimate hygiene issues, and are trying to solve them with unique products. So interesting space for us. Yeah, about 5 years into this journey now, have solved around 30 problems in total, 10 India first for women. So excited to be here and share stuff.
All right, Deep. Thanks for the introduction. So, let me circle back to Dipali now. I think like when I started off, I was talking about the fact that the entrepreneurial journey as we begin on it. Obviously it's all about those little numbers. How do we get that investment? How do we scale up? How do we get visibility? But once we've crossed that first hurdle, then it's about how to create stability, how to create that steady growth curve, right? Go from hockey sticks to your normal growth curves. How do we ensure that the brand is still around 20 years from now? right? So I think that's a key theme that we've been very interested in learning from entrepreneurs as well, because a lot of people talk about, oh, how did you get your investment? How do you step into this market? But then what are your plans? How do you intend to stay the long haul? And we'd love to understand from you that, what is it that your thought process is around that? And, what are your plans as far as an organization to make sure that you stick around as an enduring brand, as an enduring company?
So, very interesting question. What does one do in the long haul? And what comes to my mind first may sound very philosophical. I think what happens when you decide that you are going to set up a venture is that the final objective that you carry in your mind as a passionate entrepreneur becomes too overwhelming. So it is very important, I think, for each and every entrepreneur to be able to have that mindset where you enjoy the journey. Because that mighty end, whenever it comes, if it happens, will happen. But these various milestones from A to B need to be, enjoyed and celebrated. So, if you want to stay in the game for that long, that's a very important aspect of the journey that one needs to be mindful of. I've been an employee longer than I've been an entrepreneur. I was a private banker, and I will tell you something which I can, I've experienced and can vouch for. Around 80% of the people around you are going to talk about problems, right? So the political scenario, it could be the water cooler in your office, it could be your boss, organization, policies, roads, anything. But an entrepreneur, and that too who's going to stay here for a long haul, is somebody who is a constant problem solver. You have to be that 20% who's constantly solving for problems. And it's very serious. So I can have a very fancy designation. I could call myself CEO, co-founder, anything, but actually I'm the chief problem solver of the enterprise. And that stays constant. Nothing should change that. But coming to how do you scale up? You continue to scale. I will quote this very interesting tweet from Kunal Shah this morning. He says 0 to 1 is intensity, but 1 to 100 is consistency, and that is true. It completely resonates with me. Whether it is keeping fit, if you're obsessed with that, consistently keep on doing that. If it is upskilling, well, there is no if. At any stage of your business, you can get to a stage where you've scaled up so much that you can hire good people and plug in the gaps. But there will always be something that you got to keep learning. You have to keep upskilling, and upskilling has to be consistent. And therefore, any entrepreneur who's in for a long haul cannot not do that. So I didn't want to go very technical on how to approach this, but I think, to my mind, these are broadly those very simple principles, and there is no rocket science that is going to keep you in the business for long.
Cool. So, before we kind of move further, so, although you've not got technical, but let me ask you like a very simple interview-like question, right? So where do you see your organization in 20 years from now? Do you see yourself as, diversifying and scaling, multiple brands like Shivani, or, be like some of the others and, make your money and ride off into the sunset, or maybe into another business? So where do you see yourself in the long term as an entrepreneur?
So, so this is my second venture.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So private banker, then one venture, which is still going on, and then this. But when it comes to super smelly, again, a very Simon Sinek kind of a reply. You have to know the why, and if you know the why, then you stick to it. This venture is very, very personal to me. I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing for an enterprise, but I do see Super Smelly as a leading personal care brand in the next 10, 20 years. I do see us solving one problem at a time, but reaching a scale where we are solving a major problem. I do see us not becoming solving a problem for everybody. I'm not going to be solving too many problems for too many people, very specifically a set of problems for a certain age group. But we want to be recognized, and we want to continue to stay true to the generation that we are catering to. And there is enough to scale there. There is enough to build there. And at least at this point in time, I just see a huge business built out of that.
Excellent. So I think on that note, I'd like to come to Shivani. Shivani, of course, Da Milano has been around for quite some time, and you've already probably have had a bit of the long haul already. But how do you see yourself enduring? We did hear you say that you want to create multiple brands. You've already had a second successful brand that you're working on. But where do you see this in 20 years from now? Right? Where do you see yourself, and how are you going to go about that journey?
Up till 2 years ago, also, when someone used to ask me, I mean, I'm not kidding. I used to have these plans that this is where I'm going to see myself and this is where I see myself. But up till 2 years ago, no one saw what was coming and everybody's plans sort of changed. So now, I mean, see, we have an overall vision. We have an overall vision which we follow, which we're very passionate about our brands. But and the one thing that we do, we do in our organization is we take one step at a time. So I think that has also really helped us. But if you ask me, I mean, I have thousands of dreams that I need to fulfill. I don't know which one of them will actually get fulfilled, but yes, in my dream world, 20 years from now, I would be present in all the major capitals of the world, and probably have 3-4 brands under my kitty. Sold a couple of them, made my money, and and basically enjoying nurturing newer brands. And of course, so many times I discuss with my husband that, Sahil, I think we should just leave it and now just become consultants and advise other people on how to take, how to make a retail brand in India. And so many times we get approached for getting international brands into the country, since we understand the retail industry of India so well. So there's thousands of ideas that come our way. All I know is we are very, very passionate, and I know that we are going to give in 100% to whatever we decide to do, and hopefully make a mark.
Great. So I hear actually, interestingly, consulting brands, etc., is something that I also got the opportunity to do after I wrapped up my own brand. And I think the very pertinent point that you make about international brands, because first you talked about going international yourself, and then about the fact that a lot of international brands need to come into India, right? Now, my observation is that Indian brands, when they go abroad, their focus is on going out, capturing the market, and establishing themselves. Whereas most of the international brands that try to come into India and they fail is mostly because their focus is how do we get that royalty out of it, and how do we get those advances, and how do we get people to invest into our brand rather than building a brand. Is that something that you're seeing yourself? Is there an opportunity for people to help develop international brands in India as well?
I do. See, I'll tell you something. I think around 5 years ago, we opened our first store in Dubai. Today, we have about 5 stores in Dubai, and we are probably the only Indian brand to have a store in Dubai Mall, which is one of the world's largest malls. Forget about countries, even every city of India is a different market, and it takes a while to understand each market. And India as a whole, is very diverse, and I think international brands find it very, very hard, because every retail market, in my opinion, needs a lot of study before you enter it. For us, when we entered Dubai, I think for the first 1 year, we were lost. So it takes a while to understand the market. And today, Dubai is recognizing us. People, the kind of people that are entering our store is something that we never thought of, because the kind of the tourism that Dubai has. The kind of people that from all parts of the world entering our showroom, and that means our brand reaching out to so many more countries of the. So many more citizens of so many more countries of the world is something we're very proud of, and something we didn't think we would achieve so soon when we had initially entered Dubai. But I think once it's important to do a full-on research of the market that you're entering, and I do understand that for any international brand to enter a complex country like India is not so easy. It's probably easier for established retail brands to, I mean, if I had to do something here, it's much easier for someone new to enter and do it, because it's obviously taken a lot of my years, and a lot of understanding has gone into this. So definitely I know people who are already a part of the retail industry will be able to, I mean, push the brand better.
Yeah, very, very interesting. I think I'd have to agree with you 100% there. But thank you for that. So, let me at that point jump to Deep. Deep, the kind of segment that you're operating in, obviously, with India, the brands evolving over the last couple of decades, a lot of us have opportunities to, scale up globally. But I think in your segment, there is also a huge opportunity and a huge need to scale into the country, right? To tier 2, tier 3 towns, maybe even rural areas. So how do you see your journey evolving in both those directions, right? Obviously, we'd also love to hear about how you see your organization as a whole evolving over the next, 5, 10, 20 years in the long haul. But, in that journey, how do you see yourself, penetrating deeper into the Indian market, and then, probably expanding to other markets outside India?
Well, I'd say that, no matter how hard I try to say that everything is figured out, it's not. Last 5 years journey is not something that we had, envisioned at the beginning. So the theory is the same for the next 5 years as well. That, there are challenges that come in every day. We have a plan. And if it plays out, then in next 5 to 10 years, you would see far more of our range, like whether it's Rona or it is Peabody. In offline, there are aspirations there, but it's a very different game. So we're saying that our playbook will evolve, and as a brand, the idea is to just be open to the right opportunities that come our way. Aspirations, yes, we'd love to be in tier 2, tier 3 towns as well, because women, it's half our population, and they face these problems day in, day out. So whether it's about menstrual cramps or rashes, toilets, har jagah ka same problem hai, right? So the aspiration is solve the problem for the country first, starting from tier 1 towns. For tier 2 and even the underprivileged, we already have a foundation which is working with the underprivileged and helping them come on to sustainable menstrual hygiene products. So we want to continue the blend, earn money from the paying customers, impact those who can't buy it right now through our foundation, and at the same time look at global markets. So for us, you'd be surprised, like one would say, ki yaar, Peabody ki zarurat kya hai US mein, right? I mean, the toilets must be clean, but on Amazon, we are Amazon choice in US as well for the stand-in pee funnel. Same for a couple of other products. So the point is that it's time. It's a very interesting time for Indian entrepreneurs. Whoever wants to do a business D2C space, Super Smelly is an interesting brand. The timing is perfect, right now for us to not look at only India but global. So the theories don't say no to a good opportunity that comes your way. That's where we are headed. But yeah, vision is to keep solving these problems, keep breaking the taboo around the feminine hygiene issues that exist in our country. Long haul for us, yeah. But right. I'm not seeing 5-10 years, so can't comment.
No, very interesting, very interesting. So, I think, interesting perspectives on that from all three of you. But, let me now stick to you, with the next question, right? I think all of, our plans, all of our, projections, etc. They typically run into this wall of, the overall reality. Business environment, right? Reality, of course, comes in, right? Because if business plans were, and believe me, I've had, and I'm sure all of you have had to face that, when we've talked to other people, where people have said, oh, this business plan and that business plan, this is what you had committed, that is what you had committed. If I could, if I could predict using an Excel sheet what's going to happen, in the next 10 years, then I would be like a trillionaire, man. I mean,
so it looks so beautiful on Excel.
Absolutely. So, but I think the other bigger wall that we run into is the entire ecosystem in India, of course, as with some of the other countries, the governmental, the regulatory, the compliance landscape is really tough, right? And while one could always point to the fact that there are probably, X number of countries which are, underdeveloped or developing, which face similar issues. But I think the other end of the spectrum is that countries that were underdeveloped or at the same stage as India 10, 20 years ago have actually reached where they are now because they've solved these issues, right? The other aspect to that is also, entrepreneurs themselves creating facilitation for each other. Because I think one of the big things that we face in India is when you go out and try to do, for example, a B2B partnership, it's a lottery, right? People will be like, oh, why should we partner with you, right? Or why should we help you make money, right? So I think from both those perspectives, where do you see the key challenges that you face on a day-to-day basis, or even on a strategic basis, and what is your wish list in terms of both the government as well as from the entire entrepreneur ecosystem in terms of being able to develop better as an entrepreneur, being able to help your organization?
Well, I'd say the fact that there is pandemonium also gives birth to opportunity, right? So because there is so much of chaos, is where entrepreneurs like us see a fitment and create business. So from that standpoint, again, it's more about identifying your own niche. With the government, I mean, we know what it is there. So either we can crib about what is not there, or look at what we can do out of the current ecosystem. What having said that, so I don't have much to ask from the government. That's our pact with the devil. We want to be businessmen. We understand his country ke kya challenges are, and let's live with it. Not much can change on that front. But within entrepreneurs and between entrepreneurs, I would say, I have started to see far more collaborations, at least in our D2C space. Brands are not looking at each other as threats. You might, if you're in a non-competing segment, people are getting into these tie-ups. And I think the more of, if more of this happens, it's a win-win for everybody else. So I hope to see that more, as we go forward. From the government side, as long as they can just let startups be, I think I'll be very happy. Lord, just save us from some of the rudimentary things. We'll survive. We're cockroaches, right? At startups, you run one.
Right.
You run one to know that there are so many moving parts.
Right.
That you have to just stay on course as an entrepreneur. The only responsibility that you have is to stay positive. I think that's the only one thing I'd say. And as long as that's happening, problem solve ho jati.
Right. So quite a diplomatic answer, but we must tell you that, we do criticize the government and we do communicate to the government a lot.
Yeah.
But, while I don't think that was the reason why your answer was diplomatic, but let me ask you like a pointed question, right? If you were to say, what are the 3 key issues that you face in terms of the ecosystem that you're operating in, which you would want resolved? And if it was, you could make a difference to how your business operates, how your business scales, and maybe even being able to obviously contribute to the scaling of the economy. We want to be $5 trillion economy by 2024 or 2025. It's not going to happen with the challenges that we face right now. So while we may be cockroaches, but ultimately, what's the solution to not being cockroaches? What are the 3 key things that you face?
I'd say the most important, according to me, will be creating a platform where all the startups can get to talk to each other, and at the same time, government starts looking at these startups as a provider to their services. Like right now, if you go to GEM and you try to earn any of the tenders, it's practically impossible for startups to do it. So if on one hand you're saying that you have to promote the local trade, and let's say in the personal care space, Super Spelly is a brand, ideally there should be a category where they can say that we are looking to buy these products for these category products, and you necessarily don't need to be like a seasoned enterprise to buy. So getting all the startups on one platform and giving them enough opportunities to work with the government, I think that'll be my one. Policy level, I mean, it's an ongoing battle. There is not much. I think right now, if they can get us revenues, that will be very, very helpful. And maybe doing more shows for startups. Like there are so many bodies that are there to promote. Let's say my wife is into handmade carpets, so there is Carpet Export Promotion Council. So even if there can be a council for startups where we could be taken abroad and our products could be showcased there at subsidized rates, I think it can bring in far more capital than Forex, than other brands can, like Da Milano is bringing. So if we also get the platform, perhaps all of us can sell everywhere else in the world.
Right. No, I think you're right. And I think, because we were talking about Dubai earlier with Shivani, the Expo 2020 coming up, ironically, now in 2021 or 2022. And, obviously in the UAE, the buzz is at a different level. But when we talk to people from other countries, right, even developed countries like the US, there's a lot of focus on, being able to operate at Expo 2020, being able to be visible, because I think that opens up markets the way you can't be traveling to 150 countries to, even if you were doing the carpet export promotion, for example, that you're talking about, it can't just happen in 150 countries. But the kind of platform that an Expo 2020 provides, or something that we should have had, I think they're doing something at Pragati Maidan in Delhi to make it like a permanent expo. But again, whether it is with this kind of thing, or whether it is with saying that, we've set up GEM, we've set up the startup fund, we've set up initiatives for MSMEs, the kind of bureaucracies that they kind of get drowned in, it doesn't really serve the purpose. I think I hear you there. And but on that note, if I can ask Shivani that, obviously there's at least one barrier that you've crossed and been able to expand internationally, other than the fact that of course your brands are highly visible, right? But in terms of how you've had to deal with the government, how you've had maybe hiccups, or things that you wished for that aren't there in India, which you've seen abroad, that overall entrepreneurs and business councils themselves create. What are those things? What are those observations that you've had, and how do you what's your wish list in terms of resolving those?
Okay, I'm going to start by saying, right now, I think all entrepreneurs at large, in my opinion, what we want actually is stability. So that's what is missing right now. The moment everything opens up, and it's not easy for the government. I'm not going to say it's very easy, because this is the problem all over the world. It's not only restricted to India. But even even in India right now, there are so many markets which are still shut. Thankfully, we are present in all parts of the country. But if you see, if somebody is only based out of Maharashtra, he's had no business in the last maybe 6 months, right? Or 5 months. Right now, I think all entrepreneurs, I think, are looking at stability. We would want the government to take as many measures as they can to bring in stability in the economy, which will help. You won't believe it. The moment we opened up, in whichever parts we did open up, the demand for products, ours, which is not ours is not a need-based product. It's like more of a want-based product. It's something that people, it's not like a basic requirement. It's something that people buy to, it's to make themselves feel happy, right? So the kind of demand that we've seen, it's unbelievable. Our the digital growth, people are growing at a very fast pace digitally, and so are we. But I think a lot of people in the country still are very, very used to that brick and mortar concept. So when we saw our stores open, the kind of demand we saw was huge. So, and all we keep saying is, I just hope the third wave doesn't come. I just hope, everything remains normal. And so consistency, instability, is something that we really, really want. As far as expanding internationally was concerned, we faced major issues being an Indian brand. That is one thing that we've addressed to the government. We've also got a lot of support. Niti Aayog has done a lot to promote, to promote young entrepreneurs. And when they see a young couple behind a brand, they do see a lot of potential in us, and I won't deny that they do help. But of course, we always try and request them to come forward and help businesses like us. There are many businesses out there who have huge potential abroad. So this is what we turn around and say: why can't we have a Gucci that's made in India, for example, like a Da Milano that's made in India, being present all over the world? For that, we would require support from the government, because as I told you, every market is so different. And if the government helps us in connecting with the right people in in those markets, with getting us, slots, available spaces in the right malls, it's such a struggle to get a good space in a good retail space outside of India, because people don't recognize Indian brands. And this is one help that we keep asking the government for. And I wouldn't deny that efforts are being made, but my request is to make a little more effort, so that there are many brands like ours who have so much of a potential internationally. There's so much we can achieve with that. So why do we only want to are made in Italy, to expand all over the world, whereas Indian brands have huge potential. So this is something that we keep talking about. We have received, Niti Aayog had started something like Champions of Change, where they did, Sahil was very much a part of it, and they did ask us for all the challenges, and at least there were steps made towards it. And I would just request that these kind of steps, are taken by the government. Time and again, so that businesses can come out there and explain where what are the hurdles, and maybe the government can come and help us settle that.
Yeah, no, I think very, very relevant point. I think these initiatives, where they've been good, but they've been few and far between. So I think consistency, and obviously more and more of these initiatives are important, right? And interestingly enough, when you talk about the brands like Gucci, etc., it's odd, right, that most of them get manufactured here in India or even Bangladesh, and I think some of our designers, some of our products have seen international scale. So there's nothing stopping us from doing that, except that probably the points that you raised. But makes a lot of sense. So let me now come to Dipali, right? Obviously, same question to you, but in your environment, I think one of the key things that is very important that you've looked at is toxicity in products, safety of products for young kids. So how do you see challenges around that? How do you see the balance, right? So for example, of course you're solving a problem, but is the government really creating an environment, an ecosystem where we do understand the value of products that are safe to use, that are not harmful for whether it's children or adults, right? So while specifically I'd like to understand your view on that, but even overall, what do you see as the key challenges, and how you'd like to see them addressed?
So Prasad, there are quite a few things that I've been itching to say, and when it comes to my wish list, I have some very specific points. Interestingly, on the panel, we have somebody from retail, and the two of us from D2C space, where obviously the last 2 years, especially during the pandemic, we have managed to grow because we've been digital first. But come to look at the entire entrepreneurship scenario and the landscape of the country, there's this pandemic behind us, and I'm taking the liberty of saying that. And a lot of businesses shut shops, right? And I'm obviously not talking about digital businesses. So in my wish list, and there are a few things that I definitely feel the government can do and can specifically look at, because when it comes to any business, the lifeline is funding. What Japan has recently done is, in Japan, the government has introduced zero interest unsecured loans for those businesses who have suffered a catastrophe, like let's say the pandemic. In a normal course of things also, what happens is a business could undergo a period where there is cash crunch, there is a catastrophe like situation, and if the government can make an unsecured zero interest kind of loan funding accessible, basis of course certain criteria, basis your cash flow analysis, whatever the ifs and buts could be, I think it'll help a lot more businesses survive than generally the ratios look like. Also, there could be ways in which a business can have access to a longer runway. I mean, any business, if there comes a situation where again there is a drying up of funds, if there is access through government to, let's say, delaying of taxes by 3 months or 4 months, it suddenly gives you a buffer to resurrect the business and pay your employees and keep the brand afloat. So initiatives like these within our startup community, I mean, look at the amount of bureaucracy. Of course, there is MSME. There are privileges that we are supposed to have, but a brand like Super Smelly, we are, and I'm not mincing words, I'm taking the liberty of saying what I have to say. We've been in the business for nearly 3 years. We haven't been able to get the trademark going. Sometimes the officer, because of the pandemic, has not come to office. Sometimes the file is not being seen because now the courts are functioning, but the guy is unwell. Apparently, there is no backup staff. peculiar reasons, bureaucracy, comes to a point where we are wondering whether is anybody else interested in a name like Super Smelly? We thought this is going to be the easiest. Why would anybody want a name like that? Is there somebody else trying to get it? So it's not easy. In any, and I mean, the other two business owners would also probably feel the same. A lot of time and energy goes into compliance. GST is pretty much happening every day. I mean, work around that. So not complaining, but there are a lot of things that from the government point of view can be fixed, especially access to funds, because any new business, if we really are serious about building a startup friendly economy, we are boasting of the third largest country with startups bubbling everywhere. If we want this to survive, we need access to funds. We need access to easy funds. Basis, basis, of course, all the conditions. So, I mean, my wish list is long. And there is one more that tops the charts, is introducing entrepreneurship as curriculum in schools. I mean, we are just entrepreneurs by accident. In my family, there would only be doctors and engineers. And if I was a banker, I was probably a rebel, because the only logical options growing up were seen as, these amazing professions. But the point being that if little boys and girls see entrepreneurship as a logical career option, is going to be very big. And two, you have ammunition. You're equipped with what it takes to be an entrepreneur. You understand to read balance sheets, P&L accounts, what it takes in terms of skill set to be an entrepreneur. So at many levels, Prasar, I feel the government can do a lot. These were a few of those.
All right. So I think all of them relevant points. And, I think when you get somebody going on this, you could have an entire panel on just the one question. But, I think lots of things, there was very interesting anecdote. We have run out of time. So I'll just end it with that anecdote when, the government came out with its rescue package post-pandemic. Interestingly, there was something that a business that had defaulted on loans could do. There was something that a business that already had loans could do. But if there was a company that was doing really well before the pandemic, it was a profitable company, there was nothing there for you to do, right? And that's where I think the challenge is that, a company that had the potential to grow, that had suffered in the pandemic, not that the government should not have helped the others, but it was just this level of inconsistency that was there. And the most stark example, or the starkest evidence of that, was that you were ready to give more credit to people who were already NPAs, but you were not ready to give credit to companies that had great potential and were already making a profit. So I think we all agree, we all know that the road to entrepreneurship is with its own pitfalls. Of course, in India, we have some extra pitfalls, but hopefully we've seen things improve a little bit over the past couple of decades, and hopefully the next 2 decades will be even better. And we hope over the next couple of decades, and probably at the end of those 2 decades, we'll probably see you guys again. Of course, all the time, and wish you all the success, and thank you for taking the time out today. It was a pleasure having you here, and hope to see you soon on some of our other platforms.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me so well. I loved the way Dipali you said not criticized. Loved it. Anyway,
all right, thank you everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, Prasad. Thank you for that interesting discussion, and thank you to Shivani, Dipali, and Deep.
Thanks, Janani.
Thank you. Always good to see you. Now we move on from this wonderful discussion. I hope you all had a lot to take away, and do drop us your thoughts and comments about these entrepreneurs and share your success stories with us online. Now we move on to the closing comments by Mr. Pankaj Makar, Managing Director, Bertelsmann India Investments, to deliver the closing comments on fueling entrepreneurial ambitions and how investors can contribute to driving successful enterprises. Mr. Makar, I request you to take over the virtual stage and enlighten us.
Thank you very much, Johnny, for having me here. I'm super excited to be here at the World's Entrepreneurs Day event hosted by Business World. Anurag and all of you guys are doing a fantastic job. Some parts of the event that I heard did speak about very real issues that entrepreneurs are facing as they are building businesses, and hence I'm kind of happy to kind of add my perspectives to it. Janani, just a quick one before I start speaking. Is there any Q&A in this also, or is it just the closing remarks?
The closing remarks, if there are any questions that do come up, we'll keep updating you time to time. I'll update you.
Sure. Happy to kind of answer any questions that come up separately outside the event, and you can take note of it. No, thank you very much. So very quickly, as a quick background, my name is Pankaj Makkar. I run Bertelsmann India Investments. I have been an investor in India for the last 20 odd years. For the first 10 years of my life, I was a mid-stage private equity / strategic investor, buying smaller companies. And then in the last 10 years, I've been a venture capital investor, having kind of invested in various internet-based companies in the Series B, Series C space. I'm going to talk today about how investors and founders work together to build fantastic, large, successful enterprises. And one of the things that I firmly believe in, and I've been kind of saying that at various forums, the founders and entrepreneurs relationship is perhaps very similar to or second to how people get married, actually. As people get married, they live together for a fairly long period of time. In India, hopefully forever. In other Western countries, perhaps for 5 to 10 years. Founders and investors also work together for at least 5 to 10 years to build fairly large enterprises. So first point that I like to make to any entrepreneur who's thinking about getting an investor is to make sure that you get the right investor, as you would think about getting the right spouse for yourself. Take time, focus on what you think would be the right investor set. How can they add value in your entire journey, wherein you can build a large outcome alongside them? Now, what is it then? What's the that's kind of the most important from our perspective as investors? The first thing I would tell founders is think about getting a set of investors to whom you can call at 11 p.m. at night and discuss about your professional life. If you don't get that comfort, that vibe from the investors, trust me, you'll not be able to gel well with those investors to build really large enterprises. You ideally should not be taking back the baggage of your professional life into your personal life and actually talking to your real life wife about it. You have excitements, you have anxieties, you have problems. You have created a massive vision. You think about it every day and out. Try to find investors who are your professional spouses with whom you can kind of talk about, which basically then brings me to a few points where I feel investors have really helped amazing companies build large outcomes. And I'll give you some examples as I talk about some of those variables. The first one is, does the investor set share the same passion and vision as you do as entrepreneurs? If I take an example of InfoEdge and Zomato, and when they started working together, and Sanjeev Bichchandani is a good friend, we talk about it. They were, as investors, they were as passionate as Dipender in building that business. And look where the business is today. It IPO'd a few months back. It's at an all-time high in terms of valuation and so on. The business is a rock-solid business. And that joint passion and vision to build really large, successful businesses is the first thing that marks a good investor from a not so great investor. Number two, I would say, would be ethics and the vision on how you will implement that business. Now, there's been a lot of talk on some businesses being high burn business, some businesses being low burn business. Sometimes investors say, hey, I don't want to burn money. Sometimes businesses say, or investors say, burn money, etc. Find the investor which is suited to your own journey in terms of what you want to build. If you want to build a high burn business, find an investor who believes in that vision, who believes in that strategy. And if you don't want to burn too much money, you want to build a nice business which is self-sustaining and so on, find the investor who can kind of do that. And with that kind of marriage, you will have a set of investors who are number one, hands-on, but also at the same time, you will have a very good sounding board to yourselves when you're building that business. Now, most of the investors, given that, and I'll give you my example, we've invested in now around 20 odd companies in the venture space for the last 7-8 years. One of the things that we do very actively is act as a sounding board to most of our investing companies. It could be very basic things as, should I even hire? What type of people should we hire? What CTC should we pay to the set of people we need to hire? Should we launch a certain product in a certain way? Now, given that we have had experiences of probably a few decades, and we may have kind of seen similar problems in other companies which we have tackled in some way, we may bring that outside in experience to help entrepreneurs think about it. That, by the way, does not mean that investors are always right. A lot of time we get it wrong. So you need to take that advice with a pinch of salt to say, hey, listen, this is a good advice coming my way, but I will use my own head to figure out whether you want to kind of agree to that or not. But having that strong advisory board coming from the investor side is always very helpful. That, along with the vision and the passion, has taken companies to really, really amazing places. The next big thing which we see, especially the investors proud themselves on, is that they are always mostly hands-on people, which fundamentally means that they come in with either operating experience themselves, or they have people in their team who would be bringing in a lot of operational experience. It could be GTM strategy, it could be product, it could be new technology, it could be hiring, it could be sales, it could be marketing. Depending on whether you are an early stage company or a mid-stage company, late-stage company, these skill sets differ. And not every investor has the same level of operating skill set. So if you're marrying an investor because you're looking for this type of skill set, think about what type of skill set you need and who is the best investor there, and marry that investor. Even if the valuation is 5 or 10 or 15% up or down, doesn't really matter to that. Finally, the last two elements which I think the investors add a lot of value, which is probably very obvious. The first one is capital. Now, most of the investors come into with capital to help you build business, and that's very important. You need that capital to build large businesses, but it does not end only at that. It also means, and you should ask this question to investors when you're talking to them, is that what about you're trying to give me capital today, but what about my capital needs going forward? How can you support the entrepreneur in raising more capital? Will you, first of all, put more capital into the company? Do you have follow-on reserves? Or will you be looking at exits in the next round itself? If you have the investor who wants to not only put money in the first round, but also then put money, continuing to kind of put money in your company, that's a sign of having faith and a shared vision and a shared passion to build this business in a big one. At Bertelsmann, I can tell you, we typically like to keep anywhere between 100 to 150% of the capital we have put in the first round as follow-on capital, because I don't think one round of capital ever helps build a large company. And you need subsequent amount of capital, for which good venture capital funds always keep reserves. So that's a fairly important point. But also one of the other things that's kind of happening very carefully is a lot of late stage capital follow the successes of early stage capital, which means that a lot of the large stage guys say, listen, we think that Bertelsmann, Sequoia, Axel, IDG, they are doing some amazing work. Their companies are pretty well sorted. They don't have frauds and other issues in their companies. Let's try and back their companies. And there is a lot of late stage capital which tend to follow early stage winners and early stage capital, and having the ability to help founders raise extra capital, not just their own capital, but by third party also, is a very strong value add where investors add value to build these enterprises. Lastly, and this is not a very talked topic in the industry today, but it's becoming very relevant. Investors also talk a lot about exiting the business at some point, not only for themselves, but also for the founder. Now, there have been cases, let's take an example of, again, Zomato, where Dipinder wants to build his own business and he's IPO'd the company and he's running it. That's great. But at the same time, we've had examples of White Hat Junior selling their business to Baiju by saying, listen, we've built it to a certain stage. The good parent of that company is now going to be Baiju's. And we will transition the company in a very nice fashion to you guys, but then you run it. That's a very good exit also. So what is the mindset of the founder? How do you even prepare yourself for the exit? What does exit mean for you as a founder? And are investors helping you think in that fashion or not? All of those are very important discussions when you build relatively large enterprises, as large as you want to build. Do you even want to continue doing it? Or perhaps you're very good in now leaving this business and starting a second one because you get excited by running really smart ideas, making them into big enterprises and selling. That's a very successful venture capital and startup model in the Valley, where serial entrepreneurs build companies after companies after companies. Kunal Shah, etc. There are a whole bunch of people, even Mukesh Bansal, all of them have chosen the path of building one company, then the second company, and now hopefully more and more will happen and so on. So I do feel that that's another place where investors see this on a regular basis and can kind of add value. And of course, there could be other areas as well, but these in my mind are some areas where investors add significant value. So if I were to kind of sum it up, listen, investors in my mind mostly add a lot of value. In sometimes, given that they're fairly opinionated, they may not add as much value, might even destroy value. So the most important thing, if I have to summarize what I just talked in my closing remarks, be very careful in what type of investor you want to marry. And I use the word marry because it is a marriage. You're bound with the investor in your professional life for the next 5 to 10 years. Make sure you're getting the right person. And as you find that right balance of shared vision, shared passion, shared ethics, you don't want to cut corners. You want to build the company in a very ethical way. And then you want on the investors who kind of think in a similar ethical fashion. Once you've done that, of course, you start thinking about the operational excellence piece. You start thinking about whether they're bringing capital, what valuation they're giving you, can they help you in for further fundraise and so on. So that's I would say my way of describing how investors can contribute in building really large, successful entrepreneurships and enterprises. Last point being, most of the investors hopefully are patient enough to see the companies reach that level, and that patience is a very strong asset with the investor, which a founder should kind of also explore and do it. That's my view, and happy to take any question. This is if there are any. This is a great time for entrepreneurship. I do believe that there is a lot of venture capital money in the market. Roughly around 150 plus funds are active. There are strategic guys who are coming and building corporate venture capital in a big way. So there are a lot of people who are willing to back really good ideas. The question is, which type of investor do you want, and why do you want that investor? Is it just the valuation, or there are other things to think about? I would say think about the value add that investors can bring, so that you end up building a successful practice. Don't just go for the most pretty girl in the market to get married. Find the person who you are. I think that's how I would end that conversation on founders and investors relationship.
Thank you so much, Mr. Makar. And due to the paucity of time, if there are all the questions, we will be emailing that to you. And we really hope the audience today took something. I mean, we've got the investor perspective, we've got the entrepreneurship perspective all through the day, and we really hope the viewers today found value. Thank you so much for joining us and for imparting.
Thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you, sir. And with that, we come to the end of this conversation on entrepreneurship here at this event. For more updates on interesting discourses and what's happening in the startup world, emerging trends, the success stories, and what it makes to take it, or what it takes to make it, if I may say, do follow BW Disrupt. And at this juncture, I would like to thank all our speakers, our panelists, our moderators, and Mr. Makar for their nuggets of wisdom on their journey. And we at BW Business World wish them the very best of luck going forward. Before I sign off, I want to thank you all for staying with us throughout the show, and we wish you a very good evening and a great day ahead. This is goodbye and signing off from Janani Janarthan at Team BW Business World. Thank you for watching.